All right, so we had a presentation from 4 of our wonderful alumni, but now we want to open the floor for questions that anybody may have. This is the time that you really get to understand how to do the nitpicky benefits of the jobs that they do, as well as getting the jobs and making the most out of your application process. Anybody have any questions?
This is my first time in here this week, but I was wondering, could you discuss what you talked about you'd like to see from interns?
Yeah. I mean, I think we can all add something to that conversation. I mean, we were all interns once, you know, we all learned and grew from those, and so we take our experiences and kind of like, what do we want to see in an intern? And for us, I mean, it's really just kind of being open to learning new things. You know, you gotta, we get it, you're an intern. Like, this might be your first job ever, this might be your first internship. But you gotta be open to learning as far as taking criticism and taking those opportunities to grow. Because we're only trying to make you better, because in my experience with interns, we're giving you real work. You know, it's not pretend anymore. It's the client has asked us to do this, and I'm giving you the opportunity to produce a press release or a story or write a story. And that's a reflection of us. So, you know, being open to that sort of critiques and learning experiences go a long way in helping you grow, as well as helping us produce work that our client's going to really take to heart and move forward with. So,
I'd also add to that one thing that my boss likes to say now, which I think is really like a perfect trait to describe a great intern or a great PR person, is you gotta be scrappy, right? You gotta be, we're gonna give you an assignment, and you gotta, it might just be, here's the client's website, link to the product, and here's an example press release, go. I don't have time to talk to you to do any more, go. You need to be scrappy. You need to look. You need to go talk to the creative, not be afraid to go talk to the art director to get that image. You gotta be not afraid to tap on their door and remind them when they don't get you what they ask for. Just don't be afraid also though to ask questions. If you are running into something, it's much better to raise your hand and say, hey, I don't get this before the deadline than to turn in something that is, you know, subpar. So I would say be willing to be scrappy and dig. You know, sometimes I'm digging around server folders because the account team, as much as I love my account team, sometimes they don't give me everything I need, and I'm digging around the servers of other ad projects just to find what I need to write this press release. I don't always get a brief, so you gotta be scrappy, and you gotta also not be afraid to ask for help when you need it.
I absolutely agree with that. I always kind of adopted a policy where I would try to find the answer myself first, try to find a solution to a problem first. So when I went to my supervisor, it was, hey, I have this issue. I think I can do this to solve it. Is that right? And so then it's a quick yes, no answer, and it shows a little bit of initiative for you as well. I'd also say if you have no internship experience, don't think that the things that you're doing now you can't apply. So all through college, I worked at Dairy Queen. So I made a really great Blizzard and was really good with customers. And you would think, okay, like how are you going to get an internship with that? Well, thankfully, the owners of the Dairy Queen were really, really awesome people who are still my dear friends. And they said, hey, we don't have any social media. Do you want to take the Facebook over? And I did. I took it, and they let me do whatever I want with it. They let me try different things and see what works and didn't work. And that experience, when I went into my very first internship interview at Ozarks Food Harvest, was what got me that internship. So think about what you're doing now, whether it's a serving job, whether it's a retail job, and think about the people that you know, a business owner or somebody who may need the skills that you're learning in your class. And try to find a way to make that experience for yourself. And so it's possible. It's all about framing it right and pulling out those experiences. The other thing I would add is, as an intern, it's really easy to set yourself apart by just going the extra mile. So stay late, offer to jump in a project, even if you don't know how to do it. Your boss is going to be busy. They're going to want to take any help that they can get. So set yourself apart by being willing to go that extra mile and stay late and work on projects that maybe don't have to do with anything that you're studying or that you ever want to do. That's the way that you set yourself apart, and either you're going to get a great reference for life or maybe even turn into a full-time gig, which is what happened with me. So that's kind of my advice, I would say.
I think they summed it up pretty well. The only thing I would add to that is I don't have a lot of experience with internships. Many of the positions that I had were just short-term or they had a definite deadline on them. But even if you know that your internship only lasts a month or only lasts 6 weeks or a summer, treat it as if you would treat a real job. Just because you know the end is in sight doesn't mean, try and treat it as if you were going to be there for years. So invest in the long term. A lot of the skills you pick up on the internship can be translated to future jobs. And for me, the short-term experience that I had on some of the contracted positions, even though I found out I didn't like project management, I didn't really want to do translation forever, I still treated those short-term things like real jobs because I knew those were skills that I could count on later.
All right, next question.
Hi, my name's Summer. I'm a junior here. So I've had a lot of experiences, and you guys talked about the application process and how you kind of do that and get into a job. So what would you say was the most important things to put on your resume? Because I've studied abroad. I'm going to do it twice. I've had 2 internships. I've been in multiple leadership programs. How do I know what to put on there and what you guys are looking for?
Days for a year. I thought that would actually carry a lot of weight in some of the jobs I applied to. And I don't want to say that it doesn't carry any importance or influence, but I found it very hard to find a job even though I had experience with a Fulbright scholarship overseas and studying abroad. What I actually did was for all of the jobs I applied to, I had multiple resumes. And this does take extra time, but whatever job I was applying to, sometimes I applied to sales and I had a specific resume that I had for sales positions. And that was more tailored to things in my background and skills I had that were sales centered. So I would go through each job description and then create a resume and pull things from just a regular Word document that were sales specific. And I did the same for consulting. I did the same for nonprofit work. So try and tailor your applications from your past experiences. I would say don't have one generic resume, have a specific resume for every job you apply to.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's pulling out the relevant pieces from each experience that you have, and making sure it matches the job description. So go through, read the job description several times, and see the words that they're using. They use strategic campaign development. Use the word strategic in your resume. If they use create written materials, put the experience where you've done a written material in your resume. Also, think about the skills that you use for each of those points. So if you planned an event, it's really easy to just put in your resume, planned this event. But it's more than that, right? It's coordinated with vendors. It's created copy for the posters that went up. It's leadership and things like that. So don't try to fit every single thing that you did at every single job on your resume. You've got a very, very, very limited time for the person who's reading the resume to catch their attention. Make it match the job description. And so sometimes you just got to think strategically about it, and again, find those points that really line up, and put it on there.
That's exactly what I was going to say, so I don't really have anything to add other than exactly that. I mean, even something as simple as if they call releases news releases, but you call them press releases, like even little details like that could set you apart. So really, even beyond like having a PR version and a social media version, I would highly recommend, no matter what the position, like highly tailor it to that job description, especially if you're trying to get into something where there's a big HR department and maybe they don't know what it takes for a PR person to be great. They're going to be just looking at that job description. Like, does this person line up with that? So they might not have the eye that a PR person would have to know, oh, that's a great internship or that's a great experience. So you got to kind of make sure it matches.
So other than tailoring, just real quick, would you then, how do you pick like which experiences? So I have like an abundance of experiences. So like if I listed them all, I'd be at like 3 pages. So how do you, other than tailoring them, how do you select which ones are the best?
It's a great question, and I mean, I would run into the same thing. So what you have to do though is think of ways to summarize. So for example, before I had full-time experience on my resume, I would talk about all my internships in detail. I'd be like, I'm an intern here and this is what I did. Now my resume just says where I interned and I've got a bulleted list and that's it. In fact, if I'm running out of room, I might not list an internship because it's not applicable. So you've got to be really picky. So here, let me see if I can think of an example. So when I was applying for this job at Deep, I knew that they were all about food, right? Normally, I would never put the fact that I worked at Grace Cafe in high school on a resume. Never. I did on this job because I thought it was important to show that I had, even if I didn't have food service marketing experience, I knew I had food service. I've never put that on a resume since. If you're applying for an application, of course you have to fill out your entire job history, and that's sort of like where you get to do that. But I mean, I've left gaps before because it's not relevant to that job. You have to be really choosy of what to put on your resume. So think very specifically for that job. You know, highlight any real world experience that you have over, I mean, education is great and everything that you did and do at the university is great, but that's usually just a quick little bullet for me now, unless I were to try to apply for a university-centric job. And then I pull back, oh, I was vice president of PRSSA. Oh, I helped plan the organization iPals, and I bring in all of that stuff back when I'm applying for a job like that. Does that help? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that helps.
Okay.
I mean, I'd agree with everything everybody said. The only two things I would add would be, as a student applying for an internship or first job, try to stick to a one-page resume. You know, as you get older, your resume grows. That experience, that list of things might warrant a second page. But as a student, nobody's going to look past that first page. So get all the information you can on that one page. The other thing would be any opportunity you have to quantify something. So if you did social media for Dairy Queen and you were to say, like, you know what, I increased engagement on Dairy Queen's Facebook page by 30% in a year. That's gonna tell them a lot of information about the type of content you're doing and the type of work that you put in. So if you plan an event and you increased engagement and attendance in that the event by XYZ marketing tactic you did, include that information because they want to see that you grew something. Like, I mean, you can put like plan an event. Well, that doesn't tell them that it's bigger than last year, smaller than last year, or doesn't really give them any information. So that number, that quantifiable kind of evidence there is really going to sell that tactic and the work you've done a lot better. So,
Next question.
Hi, my name is Emily. I'm a junior here, and I was just wondering, more like when you guys meet your clients, when you're meeting your bosses, what is the first thing that you want to know about them besides like their needs? Like besides the things that they want for their company, what do you want to know about them as people?
it's a really good question. You definitely kind of want to understand how they communicate. Are they a direct communicator? Do they like to be given direct information? Are they a more soft-spoken sort of communicator where they kind of sugarcoat things and they like to be sugarcoated themselves? Like, for me, I need to know how to approach my communication style when I talk to those people. Because if I come off very direct and forward and they're not accustomed to that, it could be a very big turnoff for them. And that first impression is very big. So for me, it's looking kind of like how they're communicating. Do they talk? Are they extroverted? Are they more introverted? Are they more reserved? And how am I going to tailor my communication to the conversations that we have in the future? So.
Yeah, I think communication style is key because that also comes back whenever you start getting feedback from them. Because two clients might say the exact same thing, give you the exact same pieces of feedback, and they mean completely different things because they're different people, right? So it's very important to be able to start, that's one thing that's great about agency, is you get to work with so many different types of people. You learn really quick how to tailor your work style for somebody else. You know, one client, you may need to always call them on the phone, right? You might always have to do that. Another client may hate for you to call them on the phone, and maybe you need to schedule a meeting before you can call them, and it has to be very formal. So I think that working style is huge. Also, if there's any way you can connect to on a personal level, I think that also helps you as a worker, because it's really easy, especially I know a lot of my clients, they're not in Springfield. I don't get to see them on a regular basis. For most of the time, they're just an email address or a voice on the phone. And once I can meet them and put a face to them and start to think about, oh, you really like that TV show too? I know it may sound simple, but then all of a sudden you see them as a human, right? And maybe when they give you critiques back, you're not as offended because you understand that they're just doing their job and they want to produce a good product, and we're all just trying to achieve the same goal. So I think at first sometimes it's easy to take some of that critique hard when you're first starting out, but then you learn. And I think that's one way to like get over that, is to see them as people and to make that connection on a personal level.
I think on the flip side is they see you as a
Yes,
human being.
that
So
too.
they're not gonna, they might not be as direct as well, because they're like, oh, I met you. Like,
Yeah.
you know what, you like dogs. Like, I know things about you that like you're not a faceless person behind the curtain that I need things from. Like, it's not always ask. It's how's your day going? Like, how are your kids? Like, oh, how was your vacation to Mexico? You know, it's like things like that that humanizes the relationship, and it works both ways for you and the client. So
I would 100% agree, with all that. Definitely making those connections, learning the communication style, understanding their management style. You're going to have managers who are very, very, very hands-on, and you're going to have managers that are very, very hands-off. And it's just kind of understanding that. And they're not going to come straight up to you and say, I'm going to micromanage you, and you're going to have to check in with me every day. You know, that's never going to happen. You're going to learn quickly, but you'll learn what their style is. And so when you are entry level, you're going to have to adapt to that. And it's great to work with different kinds of managers, because it's going to make your life so much easier as you go down. And I would also agree, it's the type of person that you're working with. I work a lot with salespeople within the Seek brands, and so I know they're busy. They're on the road most of the time. I'm not going to take up too much of your time. They don't have time to read super, super, super long emails. I'm going to make their life as easy as possible. And I think if you keep in mind, make their life as easy as possible, it's going to be a really big benefit for you, and they're going to really like working with you. And again, it just builds that relationship. It takes time. It's not going to happen immediately, but you'll find that as the relationship goes on, you learn how to work with them.
I think a lot of it comes, at least for me in my field, I think a lot of it comes down to the specific job you have. If I was more PR based, this sounds terrible, I might spend a little bit more time getting to know people, but I work on such a high level, fast paced, moving environment. I mean, I've spent months working in the ERs with doctors. People don't have time to talk, so they need to know what they need to know in a second. So I try and be as direct as possible with my communication style. A lot of it is standardized through my company. So yes, when I am on site, I try to get to know people. Like, I ask about their family, what are their plans for this weekend. But unless I have the time to do that, it's strictly work. So you'll know, the time seems appropriate when it's okay to ask questions, regarding clients' lives and trying to get to know them. But for me and my job, it really just depends on the field. I try and keep it as short and as straightforward as possible.
All right, next question.
Hi, I'm Tina. What would you say was your favorite class, and what would you say was the best thing that you took from that class now into your careers?
There's so many good ones.
there's so many faculty.
No pressure, some of them might be in here, so.
which please don't throw stones because it's actually not a communication class. But I want to tell you about it because
This is topic we're at right now.
I know. Multimedia journalism was. I'm sorry. That was a really that class. I learned so much. I learned how to edit a podcast. I learned how to do a news story. Now, granted, I'm not making a news story every day, but going through that process of really putting that journalist hat on has served me really well in what I do every day, and really helped me when my clients want to add adjectives to press releases and things like that, and to really stand up for AP style. So I think if you have an opportunity to get into a journalism class, I highly recommend it. There's some great journalism professors here at Missouri State, a lot of them with real working experience that they've worked in the news leader their whole life, or doing side documentary projects. I mean, there's some really cool faculty here, and if you take the time to step outside what you're used to, you can learn a lot that'll really make your experience well-rounded.
So I'll piggyback on, I liked all of my communication classes. I think I had great conversations, and I met a lot of great people in all of them. I know it's like the standard answer, but because it was all about conversation, and that's what I do every day now. So I mean, that prepared me for that. The discussions, the brainstorms, the paper writing, things like that. But I will say that I did say earlier that, so as an account executive, I do billing for all of my clients. So math is something that I use every day. And I will be the first person to say that in college I was like, I will never use math. Like, why do I need to take a math class? And I have, I'm managing thousands of dollars, and that, between people's time and the hours that we're estimating, the cost of outside buys for, event footprints or like trade show booths, things like that, that has to come in under budget or at budget. If we're over budget, either it's a write-off for my company, and the client's like, we're not gonna pay for it. Like, you're over budget. Like, I didn't give you permission to do that. So, it's an accounting class is super helpful, or, just don't discount the math class because, I went from PR thinking I'm not gonna use math, and I literally use it every day. Like, in the middle of billing 17 boat shows, and it's numbers. So the accounting class helped prepare me for that. So kind of just getting into that idea of what it comes to when I have to bill every month. If it's a specific project or if it's a $100,000 boat show, that I have to make sure everybody's time's accounted for, travel expenses, all the printing and things like that we did. So, and that all has to be factored in. And if we mark up anything, 10% for the agency or things like that, that all has to be included too. So, if an account service or an account executive role is something you're interested in, that will also help you along the way as well.
I'll say Jerry Lynn's 439, right? 439. That class was a lot of hands-on work, and so that was probably that's the one that sticks out the most. And when I think back, I remember that one probably the most. And I think I just did a lot of hands-on things that made mistakes in a very safe environment where Jerry Lynn can fix them for me. And it was great to do it that way. And so I think 439 was a big one. And I would also say any of your research classes, at the time they seem like, why am I doing this? I just want to write. But everything we do is based in research. We don't propose anything to the client that hasn't been researched because that would just be silly. You don't know if it works. And so the skills that I learned, maybe it's not the specific research that I did, but just how to research, how to take the time. I use that every day. And whether it's scanning the competitive space, whether it's just kind of understanding how to apply metrics to the things that we do. I would say the research classes, those are the ones that when I think back and I'm like, I never knew I would use that. It was those research classes. So.
Dr. Balanis, you'll have to remind me of the class's name that you taught, but it was with Dr. Carmack. This was like 6 years ago. It was the research one. During college, that would have been my favorite class because I like writing, I like the research, it's very structured. But I would say that now in my current job, is Dr. Wood still here? No, okay. I can't remember the name of the course she taught, but it was training the trainer, and that is essentially my job. So if you've taken that class, I'm in front of people 24/7. I fly out to see people, and then I train them, and I work with them on different events for their conversion to the new software system. But instead of the different activities you do in Dr. Wood's class, I'm doing actual like healthcare IT events. So it's essentially the same thing, just applied to a healthcare setting. So I would say that's just a great example of what I do.
All right, well, that's all the time we have for questions, so I'll turn it to Dr. Wolf.
Let's give them a hand of I just have a couple of comments. So I have a question for you all. Do you remember when you graduated, did all of you walk? You did? Remember when Brent Dunn, he's the vice president of our foundation, we have representatives from our alumni association. There's a phrase that says, you're a bear for 4 years, but you need to remember that you're a bear for life. Remember that? Okay. So for those of you who are current students, that really is true. I mean, this can be said about any university, public or private, but one of the things that we really do care about at Missouri State is staying in touch with our alumni. And I think what you heard from all 4 panelists today is they really emphasize relationships. And when students ask me, I'm worried about getting a job, I'm worried about getting an internship, it always seems to work out. I mean, I've seen so many students go to Dr. Dillon's office to sign up for an internship. Dean Galanis is here. I want to recognize her. Let's give her a round of applause for joining us today. Whether it's Dr. Dillon or Dr. Galanis or some of the other faculty, there's a number of us who've traveled the world. Dr. Dillon and I met several hundred alumni in China in 2013. Dr. Galanis and I traveled to New York City for the New York Showcase, where we meet alumni who are working in the Northeast. But the seat that you're sitting in, you may be wondering, where am I going to be next year? Where am I going to go after I graduate? You do have a network, and that's what you heard from them today. Is a lot of this is about relationships. So one of the legs or pillars of Communication Week is to, in connection with our theme this year, which is Make Your Missouri Statement. We wanted to, of course, we had a lot of people to pick from because we have thousands of alumni. But what's really neat about the 4 of you being here is that you came home, and that's really special to us because you're fairly close to Springfield. It would be hard to bring in someone from China. That might happen in the future. But at this time, I'd like to turn it over to the internship team, and we want to revive a tradition of Communication Week, and we are going to present each of you with a Distinguished Alumni Award on behalf of the Department of Communication in Missouri State University.
So, like he said, we're very thankful that you all got to take the time out of your busy schedules because all 4 of you are very, very busy people, and we understand that, and we thank you for coming here today. So we wanted to honor you with a few small tokens. Obviously, in your time here, you couldn't have enough Missouri State swag, so we have bags of that from the bookstore for each of you. And then as well as a Distinguished Alumni plaque, which will always hang in Craig Hall. Dr. Wells holding it. And then we have individual plaques for each of you to show that we really do appreciate the fact that you are the connections that we have outside Missouri State. You give us the examples of what it means to be an alumni, to be a success story, and gives us that oomph to continue going when graduation seems very daunting. So we want to thank you.
We have a few more minutes. I was excited for this to be our last event, but now I'm kind of sad because everybody's going to go home. I wish we could do this every day. But no, we do have a few more minutes, so if we have any final questions or if we want to network a little bit, I know that all 4 of the alumni have a few minutes to pass out business cards, or if you want to learn about their organizations, we want to invite you to do that. If you have to leave for class, that's fine too, but let's end with one final round of applause for our alumni panel.